The focus in South African financial markets remains very much on the rand. We've seen an amazing rally in the unit from 1540 in the middle of August down to a 1410 low traded on Friday. A lot of this rand rally has reflected global fundamentals. So very much the Jackson Hole speech from Chairman Powell of the Fed, the very dovish comments there, the very weak payroll figures. So just a rally in global financial markets, weakness in the financial dollar. However, what really stood out last week is that while global financial markets started to battle, the rand continued to appreciate. So euro dollar turned around, the dollar started to see some strength. We saw all emerging market currencies weaken. The strong standout exception was the rand. So the rand just keeping on rallying. Good news for the rand last week in the current account figure. We had expected a surplus of close to 7% of GDP in the second quarter number. Came out closer to 6%, so a little bit disappointing on that side. But really, rather than compare it to the consensus, we should just stop and think about the amazing figure. A 6% current account surplus in South Africa. It just reflects how well our exports are doing in a global economic boom. So export prices going up just are generating the surge in export prices. So money flooding into the country from all these very high commodity prices, just reinforcing how positive rand fundamentals are at this moment. Now, what's the outlook for the rand? We obviously have some internal discussions at RMB. The broad consensus view from both the economics, the research area, myself as a strategist, and particularly from our trading desk, is that while rand fundamentals are good, we don't have the strength at the moment to see dollar rand getting down to retest that 1340 low seen earlier this year. That was probably extraordinary, probably represented the turning point in the cycle. So rather a sideways move here on the rand. Will that sideways move start already this coming week? I expect so, but we must say that over the past few weeks, every time we think the rand gains are going to falter, the appreciation trend just keeps on going. There's very little to worry the financial markets in the coming week. The only big release is US CPI. There, once again, we are hoping to see the peak in US inflation. Remember, we were expecting that a month ago, and we were disappointed. So very high inflation in the US at this stage, running in excess of 5% year on year. That has not been worrying the monetary authorities, the Fed, because they believe it is transitory. They believe inflation is going to fall back. We keep having higher than expected inflation prints 3 in a row. Market is still shrugging this off, still believing the Fed's transitory story. Hopefully and probably we will see the peak of inflation in these figures, so evidence that inflation is now coming off. That can then keep the Fed away from having to taper and hike rates aggressively, which then allows the rand fundamentals to play out and this generally positive, perhaps sideways move in the rand to continue. So not much on the week ahead, just US CPI to focus on. Markets really focused on the rand, very little else going on. Our interest rates, our FRAs and swaps saw a little bit of upward pressure in the middle of last week, but that proved transitory. US Treasury yields easing off at the end of the week, so there's no real pressure on our interest rate markets. Good luck for the week ahead.